Where are we broadcasting it live?
So, ma'am, it is in a YouTube channel,
Oh,
Wings
okay.
of Arrow.
Okay.
Okay. So, good evening to one and all present here. Good evening in India and good morning in US. Right, ma'am? So, I would
Yeah.
like to introduce our chief guest of the day. It's Anima Sabale. So, she is an Indian born software and aerospace engineer. She is currently working on Orion spacecraft simulator engineer at NASA's Johnson Space Center in Houston. She is an scientist as well as astronaut candidates for two commercial spaceflight research projects during her off work hours. And she is also very much passionate about human space flight and long duration space missions. So she have done lot many projects like NASA here, HERA, and even Mars desert research stations, flying parabola in Final Frontier, design the spacesuits abroad on Falcon 20 aircrafts, and so on. Even she have worked on NASA's microgravity fluid loading studies and so on. So she is also renowned as a NASA's Girls mentor and NASA speaker. And she is also have achieved many awards in her lifetime. That is, recently she have received an awards of 2017 as Women of Influence Award. So I once again welcome you, ma'am, for accepting our invitation. And please, ma'am, all yours.
Thank you for the introduction, Aishwarya. Namaskar, everyone. Good evening to you all in India. Yeah, I'm excited to be here. Thank you for having me. We'll dive right into my presentation. I'll try to keep it short. I have so much to talk about. So I go over my time always. But yeah, going to try and keep this um, to the point and short. So let's get started. Let me share my screen right now. Chrome window. Okay. Do you see my screen?
Yes, ma'am. It's visible.
Okay, cool. So yeah, I've titled these slides Deep Space Dreams, Making the Impossible Possible for a couple of reasons. First thing is we as humanity are attempting to do something that's impossible. For humans to survive, live and survive in space, it's impossible, right? Our body is designed to live in this safe environment of our Earth. You all know that beyond the atmosphere of Earth, we will instantly die if we don't have spacesuits, if we don't have spacecrafts, if we don't have habitats. So the body is designed to live here, not in space. And we are trying to now go to the moon. We are going to set up bases on the moon as a part of the Artemis missions, and then we are going to Mars, and we're going to live on Mars as well. And both Moon and Mars have harsh and extreme environments. They do not have an atmosphere like the Earth to protect us from. So basically, they're saying, don't come here. This is not a habitable environment for you, but still, we're going to go there. We're going to live there, and we're going to thrive there. And that's what's something impossible that we're trying to make possible through our technology. And that is the reason why this title of Deep Space Dreams. The second reason is because this childhood dream of wanting to become an astronaut. I was about 7 when this dream took seed in my heart that I want to become an astronaut. But growing up in the 80s and in India, there was no way for me to pursue. I did my best, but couldn't figure out a path. I wanted to. The only possible way at that time for me was to become a fighter pilot in the Indian Air Force. Rakesh Sharma ji was a fighter pilot. He became an astronaut. So I thought I will do that as well. But yeah, at that time, Indian Air Force wasn't accepting women. I didn't meet the vision criteria when I brought the Air Force application. I channeled all of my high school education, my college education towards it. But yeah, I couldn't apply to the Indian Air Force because they were accepting only males, only men, no females. And then I also had a slight myopia at that time. I got it corrected later on through LASIK surgery. But yeah, I couldn't apply. So I ended up becoming a software engineer. I came to the US after working 2 years in Mumbai. And after coming here in this new country, new culture, settling down in a new job, I was watching the space shuttles launch frequently. I found out there was a NASA center near me. So this dream that had fallen behind, it started beckoning me again. And even though I was 30 at that point when I decided to do my master's in aerospace engineering, I thought I want to give this a try. I don't want to live all my life thinking, what if I had done? What if I had tried, right? I don't. I decided I'm not going to worry about if I reach my goal, if I fulfill my dream. I'm just going to do my best. I'm going to do everything that I can towards this goal, and I will enjoy the journey. And that's what I've been doing since then. It's been challenging. It's been full of hurdles, but I'm trying to make something impossible at this age and stage where a lot of people say, why are you doing this? You should just give up already. I'm still trying to do make my dream a possibility, and that is also another reason. So okay, moving on. I'm a very active person. I think to become an astronaut, if you aspire to be something like an astronaut, you have to have a lot of skills, not only skills but also a lot of interests as well. NASA looks at that. That you're not only you don't only have good qualifications and a lot of experience, but also they want to look at what all you do in your life. And it's not even for that. I am just an active person. Since I was a little girl, I've been performing in songs, dances. I've been a part of our school's cultural activities every year. I also participated in elocutions, debates. So I've been a very active person since childhood, and that has continued until now. So even now, I try to keep our culture alive here. I teach and choreograph, and we perform dances on the India's Independence Day or during Diwali. I'm also trained scuba diver. I've been training to be a pilot. It's been a journey full of hurdles. I'm almost there. Let's see when I finish it. Yeah, that's my family there. I've been participating in a lot of NASA research studies as well. I have been very active Boy Scouts leader for my boys. When they were little, I was a Cub Scout leader. Now I'm their assistant scout master as in their Boy Scouts. I challenge myself. I skydive. I gift myself skydives on my birthday. So yeah, challenging myself and testing myself, my limits, is also fun. Something that excites me. And then this is the Final Frontier Design spacesuit, the orange spacesuit I'm assigned. Apart from my full-time work at NASA, in my own time, I have trained to be a scientist-astronaut candidate at Project POSSUM, and I'll talk about that in a little bit. And I've flown research flights as a part of the project. So yeah, these are a few of the things I do. I'm also big on outreach. I feel the guidance I did not get growing up, I want to give that to the younger generation as and when possible. So I do a lot of talks, and then yeah, Boy Scouts, Girl Scouts. This is me inside another spacesuit. It's a spacesuit that belongs to a university where I finished my third master's just now. So I did my bachelor's in physics in India, master's in computer applications in India. Then I did a master's in aerospace engineering in the US in California. And just this December, I finished a master's in space studies, human factors. So I believe all these degrees give me a different, varied background, which is also something important. This is a summary of everything. I haven't added a few things in the past. This is an older slide, but yeah, of everything that is important that I think I needed to highlight. So I've shown all this. Yeah, let's move on to what I do right now. I am managing the Orion Spacecraft Simulations Lab here in Houston at the NASA's Johnson Space Center. Orion is this spacecraft. If you look behind me here in this picture, it's the mock-up that's behind me here, and that's a picture of the spacecraft. It's a visual of the spacecraft that's going to be we'll be sending our astronauts to the moon and then eventually to Mars in Orion. And it's spacecraft that can hold about 6 to 7 astronauts, but initially our goal is to send 2 astronauts in an orbit around the moon in a couple of years, and then we'll be sending 2 astronauts to the surface of the moon. So that's Orion. At Johnson Space Center here, so Orion is going to be a fully automated spacecraft. Okay, Astronauts will be able to fly it manually only in the case of emergency if needed, but it's designed to be fully automated. So the flight software that will fly the spacecraft is hosted in our lab here, the lab that I manage. And a lot of thorough testing needs to happen, right? Because this is an automated spacecraft. So the flight software needs to be perfectly um, working perfectly, error-free. And that's what's being done right now. We're testing it out. We're testing a lot of scenarios, introducing faults, errors, what can go wrong during flight, during when it's on its way to the moon, on its trajectory. And so we're testing that out. And there are a lot of NASA engineers and scientists that are working on this. And my role is to support them, provide them all the tools they need available in our lab, and yeah, basically host this software, set it up. And yeah, the flight software is really really complicated, and it's been exciting and fun working on it. While I'm here at Johnson Space Center, I did get to do a lot of other fun things also. For example, I got to work on the exploration EMU, extravehicular mobility unit, NASA's next new generation spacesuit. It's a new spacesuit for astronauts to use on the moon and on Mars. And I got to work on that last year. I get to meet our astronauts, Sunita Williams, ma'am, Josh Casada, when I'm at JC, because they come to our labs to train. I got to watch them train. I got to meet them. So it's exciting. These screens you see here are going to be similar displays in Orion. So I got to try them out when they were being set up on in one of our labs. I also am a human test subject at NASA's Johnson Space Center. Now that's a voluntary role, and for being a human test subject, you need to be in good health. Okay, basically, because you're examined from top to bottom, from your head to toe. Your vision, your hearing, they draw your blood. So you want everything to be perfect so that you can be a human test subject and participating in studies um, that are for sending our astronauts to the moon and Mars, right? So we need to test out a lot of technologies. We need to test out how we need to train them. And for example, in these pictures here, I'm wearing the virtual reality goggles, and I'm seeing Mars in front of me. Basically, I'm on Mars, and the electric pulse is being passed to my brain, to the neurovestibular organ that we have behind our ear, and that is responsible for our orientation. Okay, and astronauts will be traveling in space for about 7 months, and when in the lack of gravity, our brain gets disoriented. We lose a sense of direction. So how will astronauts handle themselves when they arrive on the surface of Mars? Here on Earth, you must have seen when astronauts come back from the space station, they need help. They need to be lifted out of the spacecraft, right? And they cannot start walking immediately right away upright, and they have to adjust to gravity. And that's what they will have to do on Mars, but there will be no one to help them or support them. So we need to train them, and that's what is being studied here. I'm given certain tasks, a specific way to walk, and then I'm being observed as to how I'm performing, and that helps in deciding how we need to train our astronauts during flight, maybe to Mars, or even when they arrive, train themselves so that they can adapt to that gravity and then start performing or functioning. They won't be able to start working right away because they still need to adapt to the gravity. We don't know yet how it's going to be because we haven't had any humans on Mars yet. So yeah, that's the Cadelian lab. That's what our lab is called. Moving on. So before this role, I was in California for the past 20 years. I moved here in the November of 2018 because I've always wanted to be here, Houston, because this is the home of astronauts. This is where astronauts live, work. Human spaceflight, all of human spaceflight program is here. NASA's human spaceflight program. I was working at NASA Ames Research Center on the KEPLER mission before in California. It's in Mountain View, California. KEPLER is a school bus-sized telescope. It was launched in 2009 to look for Earth-like planets around sun-like stars in our galaxy. The goal is basically we want to answer, are we alone, right? Is there life out there? Are there aliens out there? We don't know. And that's what we want to find out in a scientific method. And so this was the first step. Kepler has a spectrometer, a photometer, which is like the camera, but not our regular camera. It has it measures light coming from stars. Basically, it's a spectrometer. So it has a spectrometer that kept taking pictures of stars, light coming from stars. When the light starts crossing, when a planet starts crossing in front of the star, the light dims. The light coming from the star gets dimmer, and those dips in the light curve are what we were measuring. And in this process, we found that there are more planets in our galaxy than stars. Imagine how many stars are there in our galaxy, a billion, right? Trillion. And there are more planets. There are a lot of multiplanetary systems like ours in our galaxy as well. Over a period of time, Kepler has narrowed down and found out that there are more Earth-like planets in our galaxy. And there are some of them that are in the habitable zone of their stars also. That means there might be liquid water on them. So it was exciting to work on the Kepler mission. It was my first NASA mission. I've been doing a lot of talks about Kepler as well, how it works, what it is, what are the planets we've found so far. Kepler retired in 2018, but there's a lot of data that we still are analyzing, processing, that's come from Kepler. A similar telescope to Kepler launched in 2018. It's called the Transiting Exoplanet Survey Satellite, or TESS, and it's looking for more stars and trying to find if there are planets around them that are Earth-like. We've found a lot of Earth-like planets, but they're not exactly Earth twins because they're orbiting M dwarf stars, which are smaller, cooler, dimmer than our sun. But yeah, there might be a possibility of life on them because there is a possibility of having liquid water. But then M dwarfs interact differently with their planet. The planets are closer than our Earth is to our sun because those stars are smaller, cooler, dimmer, and so the habitable zone of those stars moves in closer to the star. And so Earth-like planets might be closer. So when they get closer, they can become tidally locked. So there are several factors out of the scope of today's talk, but yeah, that's the Kepler mission that I got to work on, and it was really exciting. After that, I worked in the Intelligence Systems Division at NASA Ames for a year, and then after that, I'm here in Houston now. So talking about human spaceflight, deep space manned missions. We've been to the moon, we've built the space station. Now what? I've put this picture because I like it. It's one of my favorite space pictures, Earthrise. Very few people have seen this, right? Very handful of astronauts have seen this from the surface of moon. They've seen the Earthrise, and it shows us how fragile our planet is, how small, tiny our planet is, and we make such a big issue about everything, right? So this gives us a perspective. We should be taking such good care of this tiny little pale blue dot. That's our only home right now. Yeah, that's the only reason I've included that. So we will be going to the moon now. Then this is an asteroid. We plan to travel to asteroids as well, and eventually we'll be going to Mars. And after Mars, hopefully our future generations will be able to travel to the Kepler planets. Kepler is a favorite mission of mine, so I have to include Kepler planets. We'll be traveling to Kepler planets. We might find a new Earth 2.0 by then. So the technologies that we are developing today, we are in nascent stages of deep space human flight. The technologies we develop today will be really helpful in the long term when we travel to planets beyond our solar system. These are baby steps we are taking so that our future generations can be able to travel beyond our solar system. So to prepare for deep space travel, again, I'm a movie buff, a space movie buff also. So I just included these fun pictures. But it's a fact that we need technologies, propulsion technologies that can help us travel faster, because with the current technology, even to Mars, it takes us 6 to 7 months, right? It will take us 6 to 7 months to get to Mars. So imagine if you want to travel to a planet that's in the habitable zone of a star that's even 4 light years away. It will take more than one human lifetime to get to that star and that planet, right? So we need a technology. I don't know, a hyperdrive. This is Star Trek Enterprise, but I don't know if a hyperdrive is going to be a possibility. But basically, the goal is we need um, the goal behind including this picture was to demonstrate that we need a technology that can help us travel faster than what we have today. And then we also need biosuits. These are all biosuits. This is from Martian. These pictures are from Interstellar. The suit, even today, the suit that we're developing for the Moon and Mars, the XCMU, that is also almost as heavy as the suit that we have on the space station today. It's really heavy, really bulky, but this spacesuit will have more flexibility, flexible arms, joints. Joints today on the spacesuit today on the International Space Station are an issue. They cause bruises to the astronauts when they do a lot of spacewalks. So the newer spacesuit will have newer technologies. The one on space station is really old technology. This one will have newer technologies. It will have redundancy, a lot of redundancy built into it. But yeah, it's no biosuit. It's still going to be a little bulky and weight-wise also almost similar to what we have on the spacesuit, but it will help astronauts better on the Moon and Mars. So it's challenging to develop the biosuit or create the biosuit because of the miniaturized life support system that we will need for it. Life support system is what takes up all of that weight and the bulk on the spacesuit. It's basically the system that takes the CO2 that the astronaut breathes out and vents it out or recycles it, and then it provides the astronaut with oxygen. So it has those oxygen tanks, then water because it has a liquid cooling garment underneath that is circulating all that water around your body to keep the astronauts cool and not let them get hot and sweat, right? So to help them feel comfortable. So that life support system is what makes the spacesuit heavier today, makes it that bulky. But the biosuits, the biosuits have not been possible yet because you will have to make a very tiny, small life support system, which is challenging. I don't think we have the technologies yet. So it's an area of research, ongoing research. Plus, yeah, how will you maintain the pressure? The pressurization also makes the suit a little bulky. So these are the challenges that we need to solve first before we are able to travel into deep space beyond our solar system. But yeah, we will get there. We will first go to the moon, and then we will test the technologies out there, and then we're going to Mars. So earlier, the goal was to get to Mars directly because we've been to the moon. So now what? What's the next step? We were planning on going to the Mars. But we figured out if we send astronauts with technologies that we haven't tested anywhere in space directly to Mars, it will be it will be a risk because we're putting them at risk. What if those technologies don't work for long? What if they fail? Then how will our astronauts be able to come back, or how will we be able to save them or provide help to them, right? Because Mars is millions of miles away, and the moon comparatively is only a few thousand miles away. So we decided we're going to go back to the moon. Moon we can reach in a day or two, but Mars we take months to go. So we test out our technologies on the moon. We set up habitats. We test out our rover technologies as well. We send humans there. We let them live and work there for a week, and then 2 weeks, and then months. And then once we've tried and tested everything, then we plan for Mars missions. So that's what NASA is doing right now. First, we're going to use the moon as a test bed for all our technologies to prove everything works fine, to fix things, issues that we run into, and then we become Earth independent when we go to Mars. So these missions to the moon that are happening now, right now, they're called Artemis missions. Okay, we are going to send 2 astronauts, female and the next man on the surface of moon. So first woman on the moon, and that is why the name Artemis. Artemis was the sister of Apollo in Greek mythology. In the Apollo missions, we sent astronauts to the moon for the first time, right? Where Neil Armstrong and Buzz Aldrin around the moon. So those were the Apollo missions. Now these are called the Artemis missions. So right now at NASA, work is in full swing in preparations for these missions. The first test flight of Orion is coming up. I mean, the first test flight has happened in 2014, where it orbited the Earth and came back to the surface. So that was successful. Now the next test flight is next year. It will go around the moon and come back. It will orbit the moon and come back. And then after that, in 2022, we will have two astronauts on Orion. They will go around the moon and come back. So it will be like a flyby of the moon, and then they'll come back. That will also be a test flight. And then finally, in 2024, we'll be ready to land humans, astronauts, back on the surface of moon. So these are the Artemis missions, and this slide just shows you how they're going to work in stages. We are also going to build a space station. It's called the Lunar Gateway. It's going to be in orbit around the moon, just like the International Space Station that we have orbiting the Earth right now. We're going to have the Gateway orbiting the moon. It will be like a lunar outpost where the Orion will come and dock, and then astronauts, the lander will be docked to it as well. Astronauts will get on the lander, and then they'll go to the surface of the moon. So it will be like a support outpost out there for the astronauts. In case of emergencies, they can come here and get all their whatever they need, get help basically. So yeah, that's also in progress right now at NASA. The rocket that we're going to use, Saturn V, has been the biggest rocket until now that launched the Apollo spacecraft. The next one that we're building right now is the Space Launch System. It's going to be powerful, more powerful, bigger and powerful than Saturn V. And that's where the Orion spacecraft is going to sit on the top. So that's our rocket. It's called the Space Launch System, SLS rocket. Okay, Space Launch System. And this is Orion, which is what we will be sending the astronauts to Moon and Mars in. So yeah, those are the machines that we will be taking our astronauts in, using to launch our astronauts to Moon and Mars. But what about the physio-psychological challenges? The human body, like I said in the beginning, it's not designed to live and survive in the extreme environment of space. So how are we going to deal with that? What are the challenges? First, we need to understand the challenges, and then we need to find solutions for them. So neurovestibular imbalances, in the absence of gravity, like I mentioned earlier, our brain gets disoriented. Here on Earth, we have a sense of direction, right? This is down, this is up because of gravity. But in space, there is no gravity, there is no up and down. And so the brain gets disoriented. There is a little tiny organ behind our ear. It's called the neurovestibular organ that controls our direction, our cognitive functionality. So it connects to the brain. The challenge is when you don't have gravity, you're not using your legs as much, right? The bone and muscle in the leg, that's the biggest bone and muscle in our body. Here we are taking every step against gravity, and that is why the legs are so strong. The bone and muscle in the leg are stronger. But in space, there is no use of legs because there is no gravity, so you're not walking. So we start losing muscle and bone. Astronauts start getting osteoporosis, bone loss. There's muscle loss, bone and muscle atrophy. So how do we deal with that challenge? Because in 6 months, we found out astronauts have lost quite a bit of bone and muscle when they're on space station. So when they travel to Mars, a Mars mission is going to be almost 2.5 to 3 years, right? To get to Mars, it takes us 6 to 7 months. To get back 6 to 7 months, that's almost a year. Then you want to live there and work there, and that should be at least a year. So that's 2 years, and then you have to wait for that window when Mars and Earth align next to each other, so that the distance is shortest for us to travel to Mars. And that window opens up only every 2 years. So these we need to think of all these challenges during Mars mission plannings, and then imagine in 6 months, if you are having this amount of bone and muscle loss, what will happen in 2 to 3 years, right? So we need to find solutions for that. That's also a research area right now. On the space station, astronauts today perform a lot of exercise, 2.5 hours of exercise daily to keep their leg bone and muscle strong. So they exercise for that long. But what other solutions we need? That's an area of research right now. And then there is a psychological impact of being away from your loved ones for this long duration, and then living in a closed, confined habitat, right? Traveling in a closed spacecraft, no fresh air to breathe. Even when you arrive on Mars, you won't have fresh air. It's 95% carbon dioxide. The atmosphere is really thin, plus it's 95% carbon dioxide. So you'll be in a confined environment. The extreme amount of radiation you're exposed to, that's another physical challenge as well. So you need protection from that radiation. So these are all the challenges. This is just a slide showing the difference in how space, extreme environment of space impacts the male and female body. Like I said, the neurovestibular imbalances, this is just talking about that. The musculoskeletal system weakening, we lose a lot of muscle and bone. There are some dietary supplements, weight-bearing exercises like the ones that they do on the space station, the payment suits. These are the alternate options right now, but they're not long-term solutions. We need a long-term solution. Circadian rhythms and sleep disruption is basically when you don't have the day and night cycle, how it affects your brain and how it affects your sleep cycles. And when your sleep cycle is affected, we all experience it, right? Our performance is impacted. And that's another challenge, because while you're traveling in space, there is no proper day and night cycle. Even on the space station today, astronauts are exposed to the day-night cycle almost 17 times. The space station is orbiting 90 minutes one orbit, right? So they're experiencing that sunrise, sunset quite often. It affects their sleep cycle. Even when I travel from here to India, which is on the other side of planet, we are jet lagged. The kids are jet lagged for about a week. The adults, me and my husband, are jet lagged for about 2-3 days. It takes us some time to adapt. We are waking up at odd hours in India. We wake up at like 3 a.m. in the morning, and then we start getting sleepy at 4 p.m. in the afternoon. So you can see how because when it's day here, there's night there, so that it's the opposite cycle. So even that affects our body to such a great extent. So imagine when you don't have that cycle at all, then it's going to be challenging as well. Human factors, like I mentioned, isolation, you're away from your loved ones, you're confined to the spacecraft and the habitat or the spacesuit when you're traveling. So that causes stress. There are mood and performance dynamics. You get bored of doing the same things every day. You need some variety in your routine. Communication issues. There is a time lag, right? For between Earth and Mars, it takes about 14 to 20 minutes, depending on where Mars is in its orbit relative to Earth. It takes 14 to 20 minutes for a signal to reach there, and for another back. So right now, astronauts on the space station are told by the mission control center here on ground how their schedule is going to look like. So everything is controlled by mission control center. But on Mars, that will not be a possibility, because there is that time delay. So they can't wait on mission control to tell them if something happens, something goes wrong, then they need to take the action by themselves. So they'll need that autonomy, and there will be communication issues also. Because of the time delay, there will be cultural issues, people from different backgrounds coming together. So these are the challenges. Now, what are we doing about these challenges? We are taking steps. For example, to understand the physical challenges, we are sending astronauts on the space station for a long period, for a year, for example. Until then, they had only been up there for 6 months. But when Scott Kelly and Mikhail Kononenko stayed on the space station for a year, that was the first time astronauts were on the space station for a year. In 2015, they came back. No, they launched in 2015, and they came back the following year. So this was to understand how space environment, the radiation, the zero gravity period will impact their bodies. And yeah, we have Scott Kelly's twin brother, Mark Kelly. So it was a good genetic comparison for NASA to understand the difference in the impact of that extreme space environment on one astronaut's body and one is here on Earth. So right, they could get a good comparative data really easily. After Scott Kelly, just recently, Christina Koch has been on the space station for a year. She came back after, or was it Jessica Meir? I think it was Christina Koch. And then we are going to have a couple of more astronauts on the space station. But as you see, there is only one astronaut at a time or two astronauts at a time that we can send up there because it's expensive as well, right? To launch astronauts and then to keep them there. So we cannot send a lot of people up there to understand the impact. So we are getting very small data points. But what we can do is here on Earth, we can understand the psychological impact of long duration missions on human mind. And that is where these simulations or these analogs come into picture. This is Nemo, which is off the coast of Florida. It's called the Aquarius Reef. That's where Nemo is. NASA astronauts go live there under the water for a week, 2 weeks, even months for at times, to understand, to work there, live and work there, and then understand how it affects your psychology when you're in that extreme environment. There's one habitat in the Arctic Research Station as well. Then this is HERA, Human Exploration and Research Analog. That's me at HERA. That's at Johnson Space Center. So I was a commander for a 14-day mission at HERA. I'll talk about that in a bit. And then this is a Mars Desert Research Station. It's in Utah, here in the US. It's a very similar Mars-like environment, the environment meaning the landscapes basically. It does make you feel like you're on Mars because you're isolated completely. The closest city is about 20 minutes from here. So yeah, there's no one lives in that area basically. So you get that isolated feeling really. So yeah, I've been a commander for these two missions. This is me at HERA, which is here at JSC. It was in 2015, and this is me at for a Mars analog at the MDRS in 2018. HERA, a little bit about HERA. The goal of HERA is to travel to an asteroid called Geographos in the asteroid belt in between Mars and Jupiter. And yeah, it's basically an analog mission, a simulated mission. Ours was a 14-day mission. And after that, so NASA started with 7-day missions, then 14 days, then 30 days, then 45 days. They're still doing the 45-day missions. And now they're doing another one which is in Russia. It's called Sirius. And Sirius is something longer, 8-month missions. So they're doing analogs that are 8 months to understand living on Moon and surviving on Moon. So yeah, coming back to HERA, this was a mission. We got to design a patch. This is me when I went for the medical exam. So we had to go through Air Force Type 3 medical exam, a bunch of psychological exams, and then we got selected. We were a crew of 4. This is us before we ingressed into the habitat, meaning we got into the habitat to start our mission. And then we were locked down completely, no connection with the outside world, no internet, no phones. Our only connection was Mission Control Center, and they told us what to do and all that stuff. So that's the 4 of us. I'm the commander. Samuel Wald was our flight engineer. Samson Fan is Mission Specialist 1, and Deborah Hodges was Mission Specialist 2. These are various areas in the habitat. Medical science station behind me, comms station here. That's the entrance, which is locked. This is the ladder we had to take up and down several times during the day because that's the only way to get between the 2 levels, the lower and upper level. That's the food we ate. It was dehydrated, similar to the food that astronauts eat on the. It is the food that astronauts eat on the space station, completely dehydrated. We have to hydrate it and then eat it. We were part of a lot of research studies. Here I'm wearing a dosimeter, which measures the amount of noise, white noise I'm exposed to. We had to exercise for an hour, not 2 hours like astronauts do on the space station, but at least an hour every day. And that's the upper level where That's our work area, as well as our entertainment area, as well as our dining area. It's a combination of everything. We converted it into whatever we wanted it to be. But yeah, that's the upper level. That's the airlock. Airlock is where we got some privacy away from our crewmates for medical calls with the doctors, with the psychologist, and then with our families also. We got to talk about 3 times during the entire mission. Though that's the crew quarters. I thought it was large enough, big enough. I love camping anyway, so I go camping with my boys as a part of their Boy Scouts. So this was good enough for me. It was like a little tent and a bed in my tent, and we had to be up here only for 8 hours when we slept. So good enough. We performed a lot of research experiments as well, like we would on an actual mission. I'm planting seeds in this gel to see how the plants grow. They grow quite well by the time our mission was over. Here, it was a simulation that a solar flare has erupted. The amount of radiation has gone up, and we're exposed to extreme radiation. So we're wearing the masks. We are huddling in the airlock to protect ourselves as much as possible. Here we simulated I fell down and I broke my arm. Then the crew fixed my arm. Here we are using the microscope. It's a special microscope to study the asteroid samples. Some more experiments, building rovers, flying flight simulators to explore the surface of the asteroid, measuring the temperature of the air coming from the vent as a part of the systems maintenance of our spacecraft. And that was mission successful. So it gave me a good idea of how an actual mission would look like if we really go to an asteroid. Plus, we got to do a lot of studies, contribute ourselves to a lot of studies as well. So it taught me a lot of interesting experience. And then in 2018, now this was more, that mission was more controlled by NASA mission control, right? So it was more controlled by NASA. Here we had our flexibility, and anyone, even you guys can come and do this. A lot of teams from India have come to the Mars Desert Research Station. Of course, you will have to pay the fee, you will have to apply. So this was a part of a project that I was working on. Yeah, it was a 14-day mission as well. We were a crew of 5. I was the commander, and then we had several people in several roles. The good thing about this one was we got to do EVAs, extravehicular activities. When we go to Mars, we'll be exploring the surface of Mars, right? So that's what we did here. And it was challenging to do EVAs for 3 to 4 hours. It was really hot, and you're wearing this suit. It was a customized suit. It's not a proper spacesuit as such, but it gives you the feeling because you're locked down. And so, yeah, it's challenging to have that on you and then walk for 3 to 4 hours and explore. So, but yeah, it gave me that perspective of how actual EVAs will be on the surface of Mars. Okay, the closest experience you can get while you're here on Earth, right? And like I said, during my off work hours, I've been a scientist astronaut candidate. I trained in 2016. And after that, I've been flying a lot of research missions. I've flown 56 parabolas aboard this Falcon 20 aircraft to test the performance of this spacesuit. It's an IVA suit, it's not an EVA suit. IVA is the intravehicular suit. So when astronauts launch to space, they wear their IVA suits, right? So this is one of the IVA suits from Final Frontier Design. The orange one is the older one. So I've been in that and tested also. And then I've tested in this one also. So yeah, POSSUM is polar suborbital science in the upper mesosphere. It's been designed to study the noctilucent clouds, the clouds that are in the polar regions of our planet. They appear only during the summer months, and they have a eerie glow to them, right? We want to understand what are these clouds, how have they started forming, and we've seen similar clouds on Venus and other planets. So are they going to be harmful to Earth or to satellites that are in the polar orbits or to spacecrafts that are entering our atmosphere? So to understand all of that, we will have to travel up to those clouds, and those clouds are in upper mesosphere. There should be no clouds in upper mesosphere, but they are in that layer of our environment. And to travel to the upper mesosphere, you will need to be, it will be a suborbital flight basically. So you will need to be in a pressurized suit. You will need to adapt to microgravity, and that's what all this training was. You need to recognize the symptoms of loss of oxygen, that is hypoxia. So here we are in a chamber, it's like a submarine, and then they start taking the air out slowly or depressurizing it basically, and the level of oxygen starts dropping, and you need to recognize those symptoms of oxygen loss, and that's what, so that you can, if something goes wrong with your spacecraft, you can survive. And that's what this training was. A lot of students have followed me into Project Possum, not only students but professionals also from India. And when they learned about it from me, read about it, read about me, and found out about this. So basically, I always say it's a good idea if you want to experience microgravity, high gravity, and get this training. But I always tell students, give them a heads up that remember, you will have to spend. This is something commercial, and the folks running this program also need to need some money, funds, right, to organize all this training. So you will have to pay upfront. It's $5,000 to train for Project Possum. So I've always said to students from India, if you're able to do it on your own, then do it. Don't use your parents' money for this. The parents' hard-earned money, don't use that for this. This is not going to guarantee you space flight, okay? Even we haven't been guaranteed a space flight yet. With the Project Possum organizers are still working with private companies like Blue Origin and maybe eventually SpaceX or Virgin Galactic to see if we can start these flights. But it's going to be a long time before anyone gets to fly. And there'll be a lot of people in line, people who started the training, who were first class of Possum graduates. And then also you will have to put in a lot of money even then to get a seat on one of those spacecrafts, right? So bottom line, this doesn't guarantee you a space flight right away. It costs money. Even the research missions cost money. I've always put it out of my pocket because I've been working for so many years now, and I could save and then spend on this, right? So if you're independent and if you're going to put in your money, then do it. Just for the, it's like a fun experience basically, and you're training a little bit also. But how useful that training will be in your day-to-day life, other than that, you've developed that confidence that you've had this experience, that is going to be up to you to decide, up to you to think. Okay. I have done this, I'll be honest, I've done this because I wanted to get these experiences, challenge myself, understand if I can handle the high gravity, the zero gravity, and if I think it will add towards my astronaut application. That is why I have participated in the research missions also. So I've put in my application this March. NASA opened up applications after 4 years, and I feel these experiences are supportive. They're not qualifications, but they add on to everything that I've been doing, right, on my educational and work experience background. That is the reason why I've been doing that. Now it's been at least 2 years. I haven't been able to be active, stay active in Project Possum because of my work here at NASA. But yeah, it's a good experience. It's taught me a lot of things. Aeronomy, we got to learn about aeronomy, spacesuit operations. When I fly in these spacesuits, it's pressurized, so you understand how your body is going to react. And then yeah, these are both the spacesuits, the orange and the blue suit, and here I'm performing some tasks in the blue suit, deadlifts, basically exercising in zero gravity while I'm floating. So you see my feet are tethered down to the floor of the airplane so that I don't float away. The goals of these studies, there were not only testing of the spacesuit, but there were other tasks that we were trying out. These are the noctilucent clouds flown. So one of these missions I participated was in high level Alberta, Canada. That's where they are at higher latitudes, right? Closer to the poles. So you can see the noctilucent clouds in summer over there. We got to see auroras, we got to see the noctilucent clouds. It was one of those missions where we did ground-based and studies while in flight as well. I've also done the land and sea survival training and the spacecraft emergency training, emergency egress training. So Yeah, I've trained to be a swimmer after coming here and deciding I want to pursue this goal. You need to be comfortable in the water as well. And it was a struggle initially, having grown up not being a swimmer. So I found out it was my biggest fear being in deep water. And yeah, I overcame that when I got scuba certified. Here we are in the ocean, open water. There are jellyfishes behind us, large jellyfishes with long tentacles. So it was a little challenging initially for me, but I did it. I got used to those that extreme environment and the challenges. It was an extreme environment for me, being in the ocean about 50 to 60 feet deep. And it was challenging, but it was fun. Like I say, I like to challenge myself, and I tell you all also, challenge yourselves. And when you overcome that fear, then it's really a fulfilling feeling. This is a little video about the spacecraft emergency egress training. I'm wearing those goggles. I can't see anything because they're completely blacked out. Okay, so it's dark as my spacecraft has crashed into the water. I am in the seat with seat belts on. I have to open my seat belts and come outside the water. So yeah, I completed that training successfully. Find the exit, come out, even in the dark, and yeah, that was one. And then I have also participated in a study where the Federal Aviation Administration wants to understand. We are going to fly different spacecrafts now, right? All these commercial companies are coming up with their spacecrafts. The flight profiles of each of them are going to be different. So when you launch into space on these spacecrafts, you're going to pull different amount of G's. G's is the gravitational forces. So how, if tourists start traveling on these spacecrafts, do we need to train them to understand the G forces? That's what this study was about. And my conclusion was yes, tourists, common people who do not know anything about space, about G forces, how it affects your body, they might get violent also, we were told, if when the G forces impact them, because all of your skin, your muscles are getting pulled down. I have pulled up to 6 Gs. This is 4.4 G I'm pulling, and this is the first flight profile of a spacecraft. And then I flew another flight profile where I pulled 6 Gs. So you start getting nauseous. A lot of things go. Everyone's body handles it differently. So a lot of things can go wrong, and if people are not trained. And that is why we need to train people. That was my conclusion from the study. My inputs to them that yes, you do need to train, because we want people to know what to expect. If they don't know what to expect, then they might react really differently, violently, and this flight will be unsuccessful. So I handled the G's pretty well, up to 6 Gs. If you look at me, I'm still standing when I come out of the centrifuge. This is the centrifuge that I was in, spinning in, and that's me. So I was a little bit, very little nauseous, but I don't get nauseous easily. So I was still standing, and when I got out, in good condition, good physical condition. That's about it. And like I say, I love to connect and share my experiences and knowledge, and outreach is a big thing I've been working on, especially in this downtime when we are all home. This is where my social media links. You can connect with me. If you have any questions, you can message me, but please do not ask me similar questions. I have done this and I want to do something like you have. Answers to these questions are on my website. I should include a link to my website here, animapatilsabale.com. I have a answering your questions section, which has all the frequently asked questions and answers. I cannot address specific situations, like if you've done a master's in this, then what else can you do to work here in space and all that stuff. But all I can do is provide you a generic guidance on what you can do. You can read about me, you can take inspiration from my journey, but remember, everyone's journey is going to be unique and different, right? So you take guidance from my journey and then you chart your own path. That's all I say to everyone. You can send me messages. I will make time whenever I get time. I cannot promise you I'll get back to you right away, but whenever I get a chance, I do reply to as many people as possible. And if there are unique questions, then it makes it more interesting for me to get back to you also, right? So yeah, thank you for listening. Hope it was something you got to learn a little bit from. And that's about it.
Thank you so much, ma'am. Your presentation was really excellent. So there are of some couple of questions. I
Mm-hmm.
won't ask much of it because, as you have said, many people have asked like what they can do in their career, so they can
Mm-hmm.
directly get in contact with you. So I will ask some of the most interesting question which I have got. Uh, the first question is that what is the special quality of upcoming space shoots
Upcoming space.
suit?
Special qualities is that has a lot of redundancy built in. Like if one system fails, then we have another backup system. So there won't be, right now we have a limitation of uh, 8 hours at the most on the suit. So astronauts can be out doing a spacewalk for 8 hours, and but they have to come back because their battery life starts. The battery life of the suit starts um, getting lower, right? And they will be out of power if they are on the space station for more than 8 hours. But the new suit, it will have more battery power, a redundancy built in also. So they don't have that limitation of 7 to 8 hours only for a spacewalk. They'll be able to do longer spacewalks, which will be necessary when they're on the moon and Mars. And then, yeah, we have redundancies built for the oxygen, the air supply as well for the astronauts, and the way the cooling system is. It's there. It's all using newer technologies. But yeah, the highlights will be the flexibility in motion it's going to provide in all joints, on your shoulders, on your elbows, on your wrists, because those are the areas that have been challenging and they've been hurting our astronauts when they are doing spacewalks. And then we will have a lot of redundancies built in, plus the battery life is going to be the duration of the spacewalks is going to be extended because of the extended power systems that we have.
Okay, thank you,
And
ma'am.
as for the career related questions, like I said, see, to become an astronaut, that's a very common question. To become an astronaut, what do I need to do? So you need to have a degree in science, technology, engineering, and math. Now, see, India has the ISRO program as well, but like I say, the ISRO program is in its nascent stages. The human spaceflight program, I mean, the astronaut program that ISRO has right now, it's a newer program. It's in its nascent stages. So ISRO is initially going to fly Indian Air Force test pilots, right? Because test pilots have that capability, those skills, that experience to handle a new spacecraft that has never been flown. It's going to be challenging. So civilians won't be able to fly that spacecraft as well as test pilots. So we have test pilots in our first crew for ISRO. Then ISRO will eventually, as it becomes common, human spaceflight becomes common with ISRO, then they will start laying down the requirements for selecting non-military astronauts, right? But with NASA, we have this has been going on for years. So NASA has a properly defined requirement set. So I'm going to talk based off of that. First thing is you need to be a US citizen. Every country's space program has that requirement because aerospace is a sensitive area. So you need to be a citizen of that country in even for to become an astronaut. After that, you need to have, now NASA has changed their criteria. Until now, they were taking people. I mean, they were people with bachelor's degree could apply as well, but now they've changed it from this year. Only people with master's degree, that too in one of the science, technology, engineering, and mathematics fields. So you should have a master's in one of these fields, in a master's degree in one of these fields. So that's the second requirement. You should be able to pass the Air Force Type 3 medical exam. And then there are a few requirements. If you go to nasa.gov/astronauts, you will see everything that's required to become an astronaut. And to work in the space industry, remember, get a master's in the area that you are passionate about. Don't just do it because, oh, this will help me do something like this. You should be passionate about it. Do it if you're passionate about it. Otherwise, it will down the road you won't enjoy it as much. It might get boring because when you started off, you were not that excited about it. You just did it because everyone else is doing it, and it says it's a requirement. So no, look at me. I've I've studied so much, right? I have three degrees, and even my friends ask me, "Don't you get bored of studying?" No, because I love studying. And all these master's degrees have been in different areas, so it excites me to learn about a newer area. So that's how it should be. I'm not doing it just for the sake of this goal, but just to have a varied background, so I have a big skill set which I can apply anywhere else. If not that goal, then at least I want to continue working in the human spaceflight area and contributing in different ways. So yeah, find your passion, get a master's degree in that area, and so that you will enjoy going to work. When you start working, you will enjoy going to work every single day. That should be your goal when you select some area to study.
That's great, ma'am. Absolutely right. So, sir, ma'am, very interesting question. Can the wormhole theory be a solution for further space travels?
See, it's a theory. Do wormholes exist? We don't know until we find out. It's just like, are aliens real? A lot of people ask me when I do these talks. So these are until we have evidence, until we've ourselves experienced it, tangible evidence, we cannot say that they are real. Yeah, in the movies we see, in fiction it's reality that yes, wormholes help us travel. And I'm no astrophysicist or astronomer, so I don't have that expertise. So I can't say much about it. I'm an engineer. But yeah, it seems like in fiction it's possible. But in theory, yeah, we haven't found one yet, a wormhole yet. And so when we find one and we travel through it, then we can say for sure. So I apologize, I can't answer that question. I don't have the expertise. Plus, wormholes are not real as of now. And like I say, are there aliens out there? When kids ask me that question, I tell kids, see, I am sure there is life, intelligent life out there. We can't be just the one species in the entire universe. But we have to prove it scientifically, and that's what NASA does. And that's what we did with the Kepler mission. That was our first step, finding if there are planets like the Earth, because we know on Earth there is life, right? On Earth there is intelligent life, like us humans. So we know there is life. If we find something like the Earth, then we know there might be life there as well because Earth has life. That is the goal behind finding Earth-like planets. And now James Webb Space Telescope is going to launch next year. So when it launches, it's going to be the biggest and most powerful telescope of all. So JWST is going to study the atmospheres of these habitable zone planets that Kepler and that TESS is now finding. Kepler has found, TESS is finding. It's going to study the atmospheres. We can't travel to those planets, right, to see if there is life there. But what do we do while we are still here? We look through telescopes and look at their atmospheres to see if there is evidence of water vapor, oxygen, methane. These are all gases that indicate the existence of life, a possibility of life. And that's our next steps, to study the atmosphere. Then we narrow them down that yes, these have atmospheres like the Earth. We saw traces of water vapor, oxygen, methane, CO2 in their atmospheres. And so now in the future, when we plan to travel, we'll be traveling to those planets to see if there is real life. So yeah, it's the similar thing. All these theories are good in theory, but unless and until we have tangible evidence, we cannot say if they are true or not. Ooh, interesting question. I've never thought about that. It's like you guys have watched too much Back to the Future movies. I don't think. See, first thing is we are not going to be able to travel faster than light in the next few years. I know of one study that's being done that will help us travel closer to the speed of light. So closer to the speed of light will help us get to the planets, but it will still take us a few years compared to if you would travel faster than the speed of light. And as the what was that electromagnetic I am not able to recollect. Basically electromagnets. You use those for propulsion. That technology is under research right now. That will help us travel closer to the speed of light. But yeah, if you travel faster than speed of light, can you go into the future? I don't know. In movies, you can. In reality, we haven't done that yet. So I don't think I can say yes, we can or no, we can't. Interesting questions. Why? What is not used? Test beds. Why we don't want to set up test beds on Mars? See, Mars is how many? If I remember correctly, the distance changes from Earth, but I think it gets closest 65 million miles away from us. Can you imagine that distance? It takes us 6 to 7 months to get to Mars. Like I said in the beginning, we have to test the technologies, the habitats, right? We're going to set up habitats on Mars for our astronauts to live. Have we tested out those habitats? Here on Earth, testing them, it's not as useful because Earth doesn't have that extreme environment. In space, there is no protection from the Earth's environment. There is a lot of exposure to harmful cosmic, intergalactic, and even our sun's radiation, solar radiation, right? So when this habitat is exposed to that, what happens to it? Plus, there are dust storms on Mars, dust devils, those big storms on Mars. How will our habitat survive in that? The sand is, even if it's really fine, the really fine particles are abrasive and they are made of some chemicals that are abrasive to your spacesuit material, your habitat material. So we want to test these technologies out. Where is the closest we can test? On the space station? But again, remember, space station is also protected by the Van Allen belt, the magnetic layer that we have around our atmosphere. The space station is just 250 miles above the surface of Earth, and it's protected by the Van Allen belt. So we are protected from the solar radiation, the cosmic radiation up to a certain extent, not completely like here on Earth's atmosphere, but up to a certain extent. So even if we test it out on space station, it's not the same as being on Moon and Mars, right? We have a habitat attached. Bigelow, the company Bigelow, they have an habitat attached to the space station since a couple of years now. It's been exposed to the extreme environment. If you go Google Bigelow habitat on space station, you will see how it was an inflated habitat. It was packed completely when it docked to the when they attached it to the space station. Then they inflated it, they filled it with air, and it expanded, and it's been attached to the space station since then. For 5 years, we're going to expose it to the extreme environment of space, and then Bigelow is going to see what is the what how it has been affected. So that will give them a good idea of how to design long durable durability. You need to increase of those materials, right? So that will give them an idea. But Moon is closer to us basically compared to Mars. It takes 6 to 7 months to go to Mars. Moon, it takes just 1 to 2 days. We can get there faster, and that is why we want to set up test beds here on the Moon, because we can, if something goes wrong, we can send help immediately compared to Mars. We can't send our astronauts directly to Mars and have them test things there and leave them to die there, right? If things go wrong. No, we can't send help immediately. But here on Moon, it's closer and we can send help. Compared to 65 million miles, I think 65,000 miles is better. I'm just saying those numbers off the top of my head, whatever I remember. They might not be accurate, but yeah, Moon is a few thousand kilometers away, whereas Mars is millions of miles away. And so we need to um, test them out here on the Moon. Moon is our test bed. We cannot make Mars. Yes, when we start doing missions to Mars, it is going to be a test bed. Right now, what are we doing? We are sending rovers, right? Perseverance launches on July 31st to Mars. So on Perseverance, we have the first helicopter, Mars helicopter, Ingenuity. It's going to, this is our first helicopter, something that is going to fly that we're sending to Mars. So it's going to be a good test to figure out that if that is going to work. And so with our astronauts, when we send our astronauts there, we're going to send a lot of such technologies, but we will have tried them on Moon, and then we will also have tested them through these rovers on Mars. So the rovers are giving us a better understanding. Our rovers are our test engineers right now. They're on the surface of Mars. Mhm. Mhm. Thank you, everyone. Thank you for listening in, and thank you for having me. It was wonderful. Thank you for being flexible and adjusting this last minute time change. I really appreciate it. Thank you all. Have a great, great weekend. Thanks. Bye. Mhm. Thanks.
Ma'am, the